Have you ever thought the pizza that all the Italians take pride in might not even be Italian? Imagine this. The iconic dishes you associate with Italy, the heartwarming panettone, the soul-soothing tiramisu, and the beloved carbonara. Are we sure that we know their true origin? Italian cuisine has been under the magnifying glass of a culinary detective who's shaking the very foundations of tradition. Let me whisk you away to the captivating world of Alberto Grandi, an enigmatic Marxist academic professor at the Department of Economics at the University of Parma and specialist in business and food history. Alberto Grandi is more than just a name. He is a maverick who has devoted his career to unearthing the truths and dismantling the myths surrounding Italian culinary treasures. His seminal work in 2018, Invented Designation of Origin, sent shockwaves through Italy with its profound insights. He peels away layers of history, asserting that cherished classics such as panettone and tiramisu are but recent creations. What's even more shocking is that he claims that most Italians didn't know what's a pizza until the 1950s, and the famous carbonara is actually American. These claims are mostly products of Alberto's meticulous research, often sprouting from already established academic literature. With all these claims, you can say that Grandi is quite infamous among Italians. His critique of Italy's traditional food and drink industry made him as a villain in their eyes. On his podcast, he jokes about needing personal guards just to step out of his home. During the years spanning 1958 to 1963, Italian economy boomed and rejuvenated from post-war deprivation. Grandi says that Italians, who had tasted rationed bread, all of a sudden found themselves immersed in abundance of food. As the past receded, Italy craved an identity, a foundation on which to reborn from its ashes. Those who had moved to America sought myths to feel closer to their modest origins. Let's take a look at the cases where the famous delights of Italian cuisine, presumably with long history, actually shatter all the assumptions of tradition. Panettone is a prime example of it. Before 20th century, panettone resembled a thin, hard-textured flatbread with raisins. It was mainly consumed by the poor, and wasn't a Christmas tradition at all. Only in the 1920s, Angelo Motta of the Motta food brand came up with a new dough recipe and started the tradition of dome-shaped panettone that we know today. The 1970s was the era when other bakeries and supermarkets started making and selling their own panettones that were gaining popularity during major holidays. Tiramisu is another famous Italian classic that wasn't actually a classic until very recently. First time it appeared in cookbooks was only 1980s. The mascarpone cheese, which is an essential ingredient of tiramisu, couldn't even be found outside Milan until 1960s. Pavesini cookies that are dipped in the coffee to be used for the dessert was first available at supermarkets only in 1948. Grandi, with a hint of humor, remarks that in a normal country, no one would care when a cake was first made. Another prime example is Parmesan, cheese that can be distinguished from any other cheese with its particular aroma and texture. Its wheel, once would be 10 kilograms or 22 pounds, now weighs around 40 kilograms or 88 pounds. That hard-textured parmigiano actually had much fatter and softer texture in just a few decades ago. It's even said it would squeeze out milk drops. If it's high quality, Grandi says that even though time changed everything about Italian Parmigiano, some Italian migrants in America managed to keep the recipe that is closer in taste to the original cheese in the state of Wisconsin, US. The Parmesan from Wisconsin is not as delicious as the one that's made in Italy today, but it's so much closer to the original product that our ancestors made, he says. If all these weren't enough to shock you, then be prepared because Professor Grandi has more claims to make. We all know how Italians hate when they see pineapple, corn, or even chicken pieces on their national treasure pizza. But at the end of the day, is it really Italian? The mass migrations stitched Italian and American kitchens together, woven so intricately that untangling is so hard. Italian cuisine really is more American than it is Italian, Grandi says. The revelation came in 1943, as Italian-American soldiers returned upset from Italy without tasting the so-called traditional pizza because there weren't any pizzerias in major Italian cities. Only a few small southern towns would make pizza in the streets, and it was considered a poor man's meal. As Grandi adds, his father's generation in 1970s treated pizza as we might treat sushi today. Before the war, Italians ate lots of beans and potatoes, something that you probably wouldn't associate with the traditional Italian cuisine. Another Italianized dish is none other than carbonara. A 97-year-old grandfather recollects his childhood memories saying that carbonara was a foreign concept before the Second World War. That is because, as the food historian Luca Cesari says, carbonara is an American dish born in Italy, and it wasn't first made until the war. Renato Gualandi, an Italian army cook, created the recipe in 1944 during a feast in Riccione for the U.S. Army. Gualandi used American ingredients for the dish: thin bacon, some heavy cream, cheese, and powdered egg yolks. Today, you can cause an Italian to have a heart attack if you dare to put heavy cream in carbonara. By the way, it must be noted that Cesari doesn't agree with stories about charcoal workers savoring it in the 18th century and dismissed them as mere myths. Alberto Grandi explains that this new obsession of tracking food's origin is a new trend. It's quite unusual to imagine that our war survivor grandparents would care about the ingredients of a pasta. But here's the plot twist. Did the saga of culinary obsession kick off with baby boomers like Grandi himself? A generation that never savored Italy's pre-war culinary scene? He chuckles. Yep, we bear the weight of this too, my friends. But wait a minute. Could it be that the Italian cuisine we've all come to adore is merely culinary myths? Alberto says that Italian cuisine does exist, but it's still very young. There are some recipes that have come a long way. Grandi's vision goes beyond the confines of the plate. He sees the true gems of Italian cuisine elsewhere, in the art of communal dining, where people gather and share food in a friendly atmosphere. After hearing all these claims, don't forget to let us know what you think about it in the comment section.